Hey George,
Hi, Matthew.
it's kind of quiet. Anyone else joined?
Yeah, I'm wondering the same.
I've got two invites in my calendar for this. I'm trying to remember why. Just comparing the links.
I think I have the same.
They look like the same meeting ID, I think. I know I was on a call with Matt Nelson earlier, and he said he couldn't attend maybe the first half of the meeting. I guess sometimes it's him who starts it off. Um,
Okay.
I'm just I'm just going to disconnect and try the other link in case that works, and then I'll come back.
Well, from what I see, it's the same link.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same.
Okay. We'll give people some time to join. How are you?
Good, good. Actually, I joined this call because I have a question that I want to bring up to Besu contributors' attention.
Cool.
How's everything on your side?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, not bad, thank you. Yeah. Busy as ever, but good.
Hello, all. Joining a bit late.
Hey, all. Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt won't be joining us. So let me check the agenda here. It might be a quick one.
Does somebody have a deep link to the agenda?
Yes. Oh, stick it in chat for everybody.
Thank you all.
I had a quick call with Matt earlier, and we discussed a couple of bits I said I'd bring up in his absence on this call. I'll
Awesome.
just add a couple of bits in now once I've logged in.
Okay, cool. Everyone review the antitrust notice. It is linked to in the agenda, and remember that this is being recorded. Is there anything else I'm supposed to announce? I don't think so. Great. So as far as the agenda is concerned, there's not really anything on it. Roadmap review. Does anybody have any general announcements they would like to add?
Well, I have a question related to some private nodes handling in terms of transactions, but maybe we can let that at the end.
Okay, great. As far as the roadmap is concerned, I think the most relevant bit of it is on the roadmap page under prog fork. It's very much up in the air. I think the only thing interesting to add is EIP 3074, the introduction of auth and auth call is, I think, to be included. Or CFI'd. Is it CFI'd or included? I think it's CFI.
It's CFI. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, EOF has made a lot of progress moving forward as well. It's still CFI'd. And those would be the two major changes to it. Don't rely too much on the prog roadmap at the moment because, like we said, it is still up in the air. The intent to keep it small is likely abandoned. So when we concede that, the floodgates open. All right.
Did in light of it not being small, I missed the first bit of your comment. It's did when you said EOF has made some progress, does that mean that it's made progress in the hearts and minds of those who would include it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's still CFI though. It hasn't made it past that yet. Okay. No release updates. Probably should have a release update because releases have been kind of janky lately. And I've been out for the last few days. Can anyone kind of take point on the explanations? Well, what's been going on since last, I don't know, Thursday or so?
With regard to the releases,
Yeah.
yeah, I can kind of give a quick summary. So we've been doing burn-in on a couple of release candidates. We've noticed some sync regressions, and there were on prior release candidates peering regressions. So we have been working working hard to resolve the peering issues. We put out a hot fix that did resolve one of the major peering issues that occurred post Dencun relating to how we were gossiping blob transactions and getting dropped by peers. Subsequently, we're still kind of checking on some regression in Snap client sync behavior. That I think is the last blocker that we've got for the current release candidate that's for 24.4.0. There's some CI challenges that mostly revolve around some changes in Docker, the Docker engine, which we're not certain. We still haven't gotten to the root cause of why CI and why Besu in general is breaking in the latest 26 version of the Docker engine. So that's an open topic. For the moment, we are working around that just by having actions runners and Docker builders that are on the 0.25 version of the Docker engine. So hopefully we'll have that sorted out pretty soon. We've got a stopgap workaround so we can do the release, but that's kind of been some of the bumps along the way. Has been early pre-releases coming out unintentionally, clawing some of those back, then some issues with RCs, then some slight bumps with CI. I think that we're in a good place. We need to sort out the current Snap client behavior regression, and I think that we're good for a release once we've got that sorted out. So I think there's going to be a go no go call made on that probably mid this week for the 24.4.0 release. And that's about it. I'll hand back to you, Justin.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. And as ever, the Besu releases channels is in Discord is the place to have that discussion with go no goes. Okay, work updates. Does anybody have anything they would like to add as far as ongoing work, perhaps design issues that they'd like to discuss, anything like that?
I can pop something out quickly since we have a light agenda. I've got an open PR that I'm still working on the kinks on that's going to default when we're in a bonsai mode, default to fully flattened database and fully flattened snap sync behavior. That should solve the cases where we want to have the higher performance flat DB for full sync nodes and for snap sync nodes. And also it kind of cuts the Gordian knot of configuration requirements that are necessary to serve Snap server data. That one of the other aspects of that open PR is defaulting to code storage by code hash instead of code storage by account hash in Bonsai. So that's coming as it's still in a draft PR, but if there's any feedback or any concerns about defaulting to a fully flattened Bonsai database, I think this would be a good time to bring that up. Or I can point you to the PR. I'll put a link in chat.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Anybody else?
Well, I also would like to bring something here in that relates to an issue. I will just paste the issue here 1 second. It's about the handling the private nodes in Besu private transactions. And the thing about this is that most of the enterprise, some of the enterprise customers that we have are complaining that they're not able to compute the nodes in advance and just push the transactions further. As for example, if one of those transactions will revert, then obviously all the nodes have to be reassigned. So I was thinking about the solution, and also that was inspired from that old PR that Anthony Denier opened some time ago. And I was thinking, and I would also like to get your opinion on this, that I was like, and I also have a draft right now, which is open. I will also paste this here, maybe to make more sense. And the solution that I was thinking about was to update the private transaction processor and to add the flag in here. And based on that flag, I was thinking to update the nonce in the forest mutable war state for the account state. Like, for example, even if the transaction would have failed, the nonce would have, well, even if the transaction will fail, the nonce will be updated. And like this, we can avoid this kind of interruptions and avoiding customer to recompute the nonce if some of the transactions are failing.
Are we pretty confident that we're kind of isolating this, sandboxing this just to private transaction handling, and it couldn't leak out?
Yes, yeah. I mean, the way I see it is to work and to do those changes only in the private transaction processor, and based on that, I will update the forest, the worst states mainly, basically. But that's why I wanted first to ask it here and to discuss it with you, like in order to avoid to do all this work, because there are a lot of changes to do. And after, like, to avoid to be declined in the end. Or maybe if you have some better solutions or better idea that I should look into.
So there's a behavior change here I want to make sure that we've considered. And so that if an account has two different transactions at the same nonce in flight, today, if the first one fails, the second one will go through. After this change, that will no longer be the case. If the first one fails, the second one fails. Because
Yeah,
the nonce will have moved. I'd have to check the white paper to see if that was acceptable. Like, I guess the question is how Ethereum compliant are you if you allow for this? I don't have a good answer to that, but I think that would be my next question that I try to solve.
Okay, I got it.
It's kind of confounded by the fact that the public nonce does increment, but the private one does not. It does. I don't know. An initial glance, it does seem like it makes sense to increment the private nonce if we're already incrementing the public nonce.
I just think it's more about all the infrastructure. So, for example, if you do that, I think you will break some wallets because they will not consider that you increase the nonce, the nonce in this case, no? So I mean, all things interacting with Ethereum that rely on this old, so the default behavior maybe might break or might have some bug.
Actually, I was thinking like to bring this as an optional flag, and only the customer that would like to have this functionality to use it and to enable it when they are starting their Besu nodes, like avoiding to break any other existing functionality.
Also
It's
regarding
really
the cost of that, because for example, when we increase the nonce, we are updating the tree, so we will persist new data in a state. But sometimes when we are failing, maybe we will refund the gas. So I'm trying to see if we can have a case where we are refunding all of the gas, but we are still updating the tree. So it will be like a free transaction with state modification. It could be maybe a DDoS issue or something like that. Maybe thinking, I don't know if it's possible or not, but it feels that it's possible.
Okay.
Because if we can have a way just to just create a transaction with a we're just looking at the Gary message, but if we can find a way to create a transaction where we are refunding all of the gas, but at the same time we are still triggering a state update, it's like we have some free operation, and it's dangerous if we can have that. But as it's a private network, I don't know. But I'm more thinking about a public network. But,
And yes, this would have been only for the private networks.
I
private
don't know
network,
what
it
the
might
use
be the-
cases for the I don't know at all well the use cases for the private if there are permissionless private transaction networks. I think that the denial of service case would be a really viable attack on a permissionless chain, but on a permissioned chain, I think that there would be, you know, out off protocol resolutions for those types of attacks or problems. But yeah, I digress. I just I don't know the private transaction cases that well.
Okay, so I wrote down some other points and I will look into those, and maybe I can bring something better in the next contributor call, and maybe we can debate more on that if the case.
Great. Thanks, George. Also, feel free to continue discussions online in Discord if that more prompt and frequent feedback would be more helpful for you.
Okay, sure. Well, I posted a question on Discord like 1 month ago, or maybe more, with everything that I mentioned here, but I think somehow it didn't get that attention, or it was a bit too complicated at that time. But
Well,
yeah.
thanks for bringing it here. We might be able to get more eyes on it now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I wonder, just last thought on that. Is there any benefit in pursuing it as more of like an experimental feature to give it time for people to kind of try it and experience it and hit any possible issues? I don't know if it's already configurable, I see. I don't know if making it experimental kind of helps give a steer that this needs a bit more time to prove out.
I think that's a good idea. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
So I had a few bits I've added just to kind of mention on the agenda, if that's all right, Justin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just thought it useful to kind of recap a few of the slightly more enterprise-oriented things that are moving along. Some of you may have seen, I've not put them in any particularly sensible order in the agenda. In terms of roadmap, one thing on the enterprise roadmap is an empty block period option for permission chains. So some of you may have seen, it's not me who's contributed this, another contributor, I think possibly from Citibank, has raised a draft PR that a few of us have looked at. But it's kind of initial testing looks kind of on the surface looks kind of good. And I thought it worth calling out that that's it's been milling around as an area of development for, I think, for a good while, maybe 12 or 18 months. And so I'm kind of hopeful that that might make it in at some point in the near future. So I thought just worth mentioning that.
Do you have a link to that PR handy that you could drop in the chat?
Yes, I do. It is. Yeah. Just trying to get the direct link without the extra stuff. So that's the draft PR.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's currently in draft. I've pulled it and tested it myself. And the kind of basics work. I've put some comments in, as have others. But yeah, if anyone's interested in trying that, and maybe comparing to the Clique one, I've not tried the Clique implementation of this to see how they compare. Then yeah, that's there to have a look at. I wanted to raise just some general things that I guess I'm spending some time on, and I've talked to Matt Nelson about, and I think he and I are going to try and move along a little bit together. And again, a couple of chats on Discord in this area. So I'm going to try and spend a bit more time now that the experimental Snap server is available. I'm spending a bit of time testing the combination of kubeft, Bonsai, and Snap Sync server to see just where that space is at for permission chains. I think the benefit of Snap server for the speed of syncing world state for new nodes is obviously kind of going to be really valuable to a lot of enterprise users. Bonsai storage is the kind of the way that Besu's going, and potentially bring some performance improvements. So it'd be interesting to see if the performance tests that we run with kubeft show any difference just by moving to Bonsai. And so yeah, so there's a thread in Discord under Besu Enterprise where I've tried some stuff. We're hitting some issues, possibly. I don't know if people have seen the issues that float around about RocksDB. I think RocksDB concurrent issues, or trying to write to the database concurrently with Bonsai and kubeft particularly. We seem to hit that. So I'm anticipating maybe pushing that area of trying to resolve that issue with RocksDB at some point. May come out of pushing the performance of kubeft and Bonsai, because we don't seem to see that with kubeft and Forest. Possibly we can't drive it fast enough or something. So that combo of kubeft, Bonsai, and Snap server is, I think, going to be a kind of increasing interest from enterprise users as to where Besu is on that journey. I've been spending time on this kubeft IBFT soak test. I mentioned it on a previous contributor call, and I'm hopeful to raise a PR soon that it would be a totally optional Gradle task that you can run if you want to, but isn't a gating task as part of a PR, because the idea is this would soak a version of Besu for some number of hours. So I'm hoping I'll raise a PR that would allow, so our intended use of that is to contribute it to open source and use that as part of the validation of a Besu release in our platform. So I'm hopeful I might have a PR. So maybe on the next contributor call, I'll maybe demo that quickly if that's helpful. And
cool, yeah.
Yeah, I think at some point it could go into a part of the Besu kind of CI/CD pipeline. Almost certainly not like the per PR part of the pipeline, but maybe an easy one button to click kind of option on a per release soak. That means while all the public chain syncing testing and soaking is going on, that can just be running. And the idea is it goes through things like creating a London chain, then stopping nodes, restarting nodes, moving into Shanghai, restarting them, that kind of stuff, to give a kind of a journey through a chain in a permissioned environment. So yeah, I'll hopefully give a bit more detail on that and have a PR raised by the next call. And the last thing I just wanted to mention was that one area that kind of came out of that testing that I don't think I'd appreciated before is I'm looking at a little bit into the way that kubeft behaves when you lose too many validators to have quorum. when you finally bring back enough validators to have quorum, the delay between them all running and actually mining their next block is potentially quite long. I think I'm right in saying it's kind of proportional to the duration of the outage, which is kind of interesting, both from an enterprise kind of availability point of view, and also just generally what could be done to improve kubeft recovery in a way that isn't deviating from the kubeft spec. And if anyone has got an interest in that or wants to discuss more on Discord or has thoughts around it, then I'm all ears, as they say. I think that's me, Justin. I just thought I'd recap a few bits and
Awesome.
pieces that are going on.
Yeah, so I think there might be a little bit of an overlap that could be interesting in about a month or so, as we are going to try to automate more release prep validation and soak type things. We're a bit off, it's a bit of a ways off still, but by then you'll likely have a better sense of what it is that you're building to soak in a QBFT test, and we might be willing to incorporate that with the other things that we're putting forward. So that's a fun synergy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you can't have too many tests. It's just sometimes you can't run them all the time. So my view is write some useful tests and then work out where they serve some purpose.
Awesome. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to add to interesting work?
Do we want to discuss like in a more like realistic way to get collaboration done on that set of work that Matt is going to work on? Like, I feel like chucking bugs over the fence is probably not the right way to test Bonsai in this use case. Like, do we want to set up a cadence or something like that? Like, I feel like this call is once a month, but we probably, or, use, I just want to make sure that it's not like we receive bugs and then we at the consensus team to like look at from Bonsai and then we kind of just look at it a little bit. I don't know. I'm trying to think more.
Do you think it needs to be more of a like this is maybe not like not a war room, but just like a stream of work that that involves making sure Bonsai is suitable for private networks and QBFT and other consensus mechanisms, in terms of the rocks stability and concurrency, and also like features like snap. It sounds like a topic that needs some specific work, because it sounds like private networks are still very much biased towards forest.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to make sure that if we're trying to signal a deprecation, especially around the Verkle migration, we need to have this solution in place or we can't remove that code, right? I agree. I mean, Gary, I think I will on our side, like take a look and put it into a priority order. But I think, I mean, it could be as simple as like a weekly 15-20 minute meeting and be like, like, Matt Whitehead, do you have any questions or have you uncovered anything? And then we can review logs, we can review nodes. It's because, like pasting bug logs in Discord and in GitHub is like not really an effective way for our team to especially like review some of the edge cases and review some of the bugs. Or it could be something like we can give you the tools to better understand this perspective so that you can, I'm happy with either really. Because I think it's going to be more like, okay, you have a RocksDB busy exception, but that's, there's so many reasons that could occur. We have to find
exactly.
Yeah, like it's not just the log, right? We should help, at least at a minimum. I think the consensus team could help you set up the profiling and like some of the more kind of detailed mechanisms we use to debug deep stuff like this might be helpful. And even if anything, you would uncover stuff that we can work to patch on our side if it's clear and straightforward. Hey, I've uncovered this case in Bonsai where it actually just doesn't map correctly to QBFT or something like that. Like, I think finding all of those and enumerating them with us will be super helpful and it'll save some time on both sides. So if we think the first step is like, how do we share, or maybe this is something we could do in general, like record and share a knowledge sharing session on how the consensus team debugs, probably would be useful to put on the wiki somewhere for any contributor or any new maintainer. Just like in depth, it could be useful. Or, you know, if that seems like it's too heavy-handed, we could do something as simple as like set up a meeting in a week and say, hey, this is what I uncovered during testing. I couldn't even get past XYZ point. I couldn't bring the chain in sync. These are my debug logs. Like, this is the trace log. Like, go through it and kind of pulling out relevant info. I don't know. I think that I'm open to either.
Maybe not only one by week, more related to the issue we have. If we have a blocking issue, maybe just set up a meeting soon in order to unblock the situation, not waiting 1 week to unblock the situation. And maybe after, when the situation will be stabilized, we can have one meeting per week just to follow the project. But I feel that maybe at the beginning, if we have a lot of issue, maybe we need to have more meetings to help to debug, to understand what is the problem, etc. Because if we are just waiting every time 1 week to unblock the problem, I think it could be very slow to move forward.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to progress this a little quicker if we can enable Matt Whitehead. Like, I don't want you to sit and be like, hey, we're testing this and everything's broken and we're not making any progress. So I like, yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. So so I would have time for a bit more kind of hands-on working through, you know, issues like this when they're particularly current and we're just trying to get over like some initial hurdles. Also, I guess I should say with so we try and do a lot of our testing with Caliper, the open source, the Hyperledger tool. And one reason for that is it's much easier to give someone else the config you've used to run a test. And that in combination with like the enterprise profile for Besu means it's hopefully becoming a bit easier to just tell someone what your Caliper config file is, and that you're using the enterprise profile. And assuming you have similar spec machines, you've got the you know, enough to kind of try and recreate an issue a little bit more easily. But certainly on these issues around things like Bonsai and Snap, we're trying to be ahead of where I think enterprise users are going to be. We're not trying to push this out in a week and we're getting frustrated by some of these issues. This is a more of a general trying to make sure that we you know, the Besu is in good shape for enterprise in the coming kind of 12 months. So it's not super pressing from our side. I don't want to kind of give the impression we're really keen to get this out to our users and we're unable to. It's more that we just want to have some time to then exercise it, having got over some of these initial more teething issues than anything else. On that note, I just, while I think about it, I just wanted to mention, I think the enterprise profile settings might need some thought, because they don't currently let you create just a single node, which is, I think, is an oversight on my part. I think I recommended that we use FastSync for the enterprise profile, but that kind of requires at least one other node, and when you're starting, you don't have that. So I think maybe I'll raise that in a Git issue, but I think there might be a bit of evolving of the enterprise profile, especially, you know, as part of that particular issue I've hit, and also around what that's going to look like for SnapSync.
Yeah, we could also just remove the sync method from the profile itself, and then force the user to pick one. It'll default to fast, but or snap rather at this point.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of quandary, is we don't want to default to, because literally Besu won't start now if you do kubeft and snap. So I think Sally put a check in there because it looks like it's going to try and work and it won't. So I think we need to pick something. I don't know if we're going to end up with multiple profiles for the initial nodes versus a node that's joining a network. It's probably a bit of a gap in my knowledge as to how those sync methods work when you're creating the first node, whether or not you can create a snap sync node as the first node, or whether that requires there to be at least one peer. yeah, so some stuff to, I think, iterate on the enterprise profile work.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I think with the like the European time zone, like there's folks that can help with the bonsai stuff. I think just maybe we start with just debugging in the contributor channel and like posting and sharing logs. I do
Yeah.
agree that testing Besu recorded call eventually would be valuable. And maybe we can pick one issue to work through and just like go through it and record it if it's on Zoom. Yeah.
Maybe I have something to add. One point that is related to performance. So I think it makes a lot of sense to push for Bonsai for private networks, because in terms of performance, there is a huge difference to compared to Forest, because there are different layers in terms of optimization in Bonsai. We have the flat database, but there is another point to consider, which is the archive nodes, even in private networks. So we will still either to make Bonsai archive friendly, or still have Forest nodes for RPC.
Yeah, Matt and I actually discussed exactly that earlier today around what the future looks like for an enterprise user, and what their answer is to, I want to access some archive / audit related information. Is it that I keep one node as a Forest node, which gives me the ability to use it as an archive? Is it that I have one-off solutions to rebuild a node to a particular block by syncing only up to a given block? I think I think our users are going to be really keen to hear what the story is for that once kind of we start talking much more about Bonsai and the performance benefits and the storage benefits. I think that they're going to immediately ask, okay, but what does that mean for our current worldview of what an archive node gives us?
Yeah, I think, at least in my mind, it's a use case differentiation, and we don't need to like there will be different performance needs, right? And I think that we're still going to push eventually at the Bonsai archive format. We just need, again, if the forcing function will really be deprecating Forest, as Gary mentioned in the chat, because one hand, it won't be supported on mainnet eventually. And that means that any new modifications to like new opcodes, etc., probably won't be able to be backported. So if folks want like the newest libraries, we'll have to figure something out anyway. So I think we just need to get ready for that eventuality. And in the short term, we telegraph that, like, you can interplay these both kinds of nodes on the same network types. It's like what we use in Linea right now is a mixture of full nodes using Bonsai and a mixture of archive nodes running Forest. And we start mentioning like, yeah, we have all these performance benefits. We have XYZ. We're working on the RPC stack. But it's just a matter of when we can prioritize working through a new archive format that's just Bonsai compatible. I don't know. I think the benefits of the full node still like kind of, it's still worth getting the full nodes off Forest as soon as possible. For a number of reasons, especially if we're thinking of just like transaction validation and block creation. Like the archive nodes will be able to follow the network without much issue. But the matter is like TPS, right? If I'm supporting 500 TPS on the validating nodes is very different than needing to support that on the full nodes. See what I'm saying? Because they can lag chainhead a little bit. They should lag head, right? For RPC, like you don't need to route near head RPC to a Forest archive node. So it doesn't really matter if it lags chainhead. Anyway, I'm thinking out loud, but my point is like, I think we can use case hand wave this one away for now while we focus on getting the full nodes on Bonsai and SnapSync with QBFT and shoring up that use case. And as we get capacity to work on Bonsai Archive, which is going to be a little bit, that's kind of the next set of solutions, right? Is once these networks that are running forest archives become so like, when they're unusably slow, like we're going to need to do this anyway. So I want to get ahead of that. But I think right now it's a use case. It's all about telegraphing the use case to users. Does anyone on our side have any thoughts there? I think that's the product playbook that I'm thinking right now. I don't really know if we have a different engineering perspective, but we don't really need to touch it yet, is kind of the point. I'd rather focus on the full node use case. Okay, silence is good, I guess.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. There's work underway to support bonsai archive. So I don't think we would just hand wave it away, but maybe that hand waving can buy enough time to make a a bonsai based performant archive format.
Yeah, and simplified code paths is kind of my primary interest. It can be about as slow. I don't know. Anything else on that topic? I think what we came away from is that we are going to start back and forthing this in Discord. So Matt Whitehead, as your tests go forward, let's try to do back and forth in the contributor channel and just like hammer at some of these problems with our expertise.
Yep.
I also think that I don't know if you spoke about this before I got on the call, but Emezien maybe providing a way for him to start profiling some of those use cases, just so that we can see where the quick wins would be in terms of like IO and bottlenecks and stuff. I have a feeling that QBFT and Bonsai have some of those available where it's just an unoptimized consensus algorithm for that use case.
Yeah, we haven't talked specifically about it, but I did wonder if if it would be useful to put our current kind of performance results into the wiki somewhere with the caliper test we use, the Kubernetes pod sizes we use, and the results we get. And that would make it easy for someone to see what we're running and what numbers we hit before Besu starts becoming very unstable. So maybe if I were to do that and point people at Emezien at that, so that I'm not dumping loads of information into Discord, but we can use Discord for communication and put some of the resources into the wiki.
Yeah, that would be great, actually.
Okay.
The wiki sounds a good place.
Yeah, and it's a good way of tracking progress if we find there are tuning parameters we're not setting we should be, or changes once we move up to Bonsai, then it makes a convenient place to track some of the kind of progress of performance. I'll do that in the coming few days and ping you, Emezien.
Thanks.
If you have also some modification in the code, we can also take a look to see if we can some issue regarding how to use Bonsai. For example, in Bonsai, when we are doing transaction simulation, we need to use a snapshot of the state and not the persisted state, so it should be different and could trigger some state root issue or something like that if you are not using the good version of the state. So the persisted state, it's only used in order to move the head, and all of the other cases need to use a snapshot. So maybe just if we can look at the code quickly, maybe we can find some issue easily, and it can help to unblock some situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gary suggested a couple of things in the Zoom chat, and I had asked the question on the enterprise channel. I think what I maybe will do is just start a fresh conversation on the contributor channel. And I think I'll just put the couple of issues that I currently see as blockers. I think one is RocksDB. I think one is a world state error that someone else may have reported more generally. And I think those are the two kind of issues that are stopping us even run a performance test beyond like the first minute. So if I start that conversation, I'll tag one or two people who've chipped in here, and use the contributor channel to progress things.
Okay.
All right. Sounds like we
Awesome.
are good.
Yeah, let's do it. I think now is the time to try to make some progress on this stuff. And yeah, curious to see how the Snap server stuff progresses, interestingly. All right, cool. Anything else? Or shall we wrap it up here?
Silence equals assent.
All right. I'll chat with you all in Discord. Thank you, everyone.
See ya.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. Bye.